From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende. Riding shotgun next to me as he does each and every episode is Andre Johnson Jr. Do not forget the Junior because Senior will not be happy. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. We have another episode today. It is Thursday here in the city of New Orleans, getting closer and closer to the weekend. I know you got a pretty big weekend planned, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I'm actually headed to Missouri. My little sister, Chloe, is graduating from
Congrats,
grad
Chloe.
school. Shout out, Chloe.
Congrats.
So, yeah, I'll be in Missouri this weekend, seeing what they got going on out there. I don't really know what's out there. I've never actually visited out there until this weekend. So,
What school?
University
of Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay, so SEC.
Yeah, SEC school. You know, not the one that's actually good at sports, but you know they hang in there. They do their best.
That's a pretty big journalism school, isn't there? Out there, huh?
Yeah.
Is that what she's in?
No, she's doing psychology.
Psychology. Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
and apparently we're heading to St. Louis while we're out there. So
right.
I know Kansas City is out there too.
Yeah.
So we might be all around the state of Missouri.
Well, y'all have fun this weekend. Should be a fun weekend. Congrats, Chloe. We are getting closer and closer to another weekend here in Saints land, Saints calendar, whatever you want to call it. They got a big weekend this weekend. We're going to get to that in a minute. It's rookie minicamp weekend. We'll get our thoughts on that a little bit later. But before that, I wanted to talk about the big picture because, you know, we've done a couple pods this week and a pretty significant development happened earlier in the week when a player that had a strong connection to the Saints was available until he was not available. He ended up signing with another team. Of course, we're talking about Andrus Peat, who had been out there, and now he's gone. And I think it's important to talk about because, you know, we had a lot of people had sort of kind of kept Andrus Peat in the background there just as, hey, they still have some issues. Maybe he's a possibility. Turns out he is no longer a possibility.
Definitely. Andrus Peat has signed with another team, as you mentioned. So now the Saints offensive line, which still remains today as their weakest part of the team, even after drafting Taluese Fuaga, Andrus Peat was a guy with a lot of veteran experience who understood, even though it's a new coordinator coming in, who understood the way the Saints have run over the last few years. So a lot of people, including us, we did a podcast about a week or two ago when we talked about potential free agents that the Saints could bring in to make them better today. And Andrus Peat was one of the guys we named. So now with Andrus Peat off the market, how big of a development was that to you?
Yeah, I think it's a huge development, but maybe it goes to show you that the Saints never really had any interest because he's been available all this time. Maybe they don't feel like he's a fit. Maybe they feel like he's, you know, past his, you know, usefulness or past his prime, whatever the case may be. He is over the age of 30. He's played a lot of football, former first-round pick, but last year he came in, played fairly well after initially losing his job, didn't necessarily complain. And it should be pointed out that last year he basically took a pay cut to return to the Saints. And now, you know, contract's up. He becomes a free agent. First wave comes, second wave comes, draft comes, third wave comes. And now all of a sudden he's still available until this week when he signs with the Raiders. Is that right? The Raiders. Yes, the Las Vegas Raiders. So now Andrus Peat is no longer available. So that guy that was out there that a lot of us had connected to the Saints as a possibility is no longer the possibility. So I can't say that it's a bigger problem than it has been all offseason just because he's gone. The Saints never wanted him. But the big problem or the big issue with the team still very much remains. That is the left side of the offensive line for which he played at two positions, the two positions that they still have major question marks about. As we mentioned, even if Trevor Penning, you pencil him in at left tackle, you cannot just straight up count on that guy to be the guy week in and week out. That's the hope, but that's not a guarantee. And then at left guard, which to me is the bigger issue because you don't have anyone. I mean, I guess you can take a leap of faith with Nick Saldiveri. Maybe he competes. I guess you could take a leap of faith with a guy like Ali Udoh, who's been pretty much a utility sixth offensive lineman his entire career and pencil those guys in the left guard. But to me, that's how you're going to roll into the season. There's still time left. We know that. But I just cannot see, if you're the Saints, looking at what you currently have along the offensive line, why there hasn't been more investment. That's coming after the two guys they did go out and sign, and Justin Herron and Shane Lemieux. So to me, you're still dealing with an issue here that's always been there, and it's just one less option available for you to possibly revisit with Andrus Peat, because now he's out to the to Sin City in Las Vegas with the Raiders.
Right, and my biggest concern, obviously, left guard is an issue. Nick Saldivari, as you mentioned, he was a healthy scratch for most games last year. He wasn't active. He was on the inactive list almost every week, and he wasn't injured. Ali Udo, obviously somebody who crossed over with Clint Kubiak in Minnesota, but he's been a backup for the majority of his career, and that left guard worries me, but I'm still worried about left tackle, because what if Trevor Penning doesn't work out?
Who's your guy?
Exactly. We've been talking about, you need to coach this guy up. Don't give up on Trevor Penning just yet, but so far, Trevor Penning has not been able to live up to the expectations that you would have for him as somebody who was drafted in the first round, and we're hoping he can figure it out this year, because the Saints need him to figure it out this year.
Yes.
But if he can't, and Derek Carr's blind spot is vulnerable, what do you do? Because, I mean, who would even be your backup left tackle right now on this roster?
Is it? I mean, I know Ali Udo can play guard and tackle, so would it be him?
Right.
Would it be Landon Young? Would it be the 7th round pick? Josiah, the last name escapes me right now. You know what I'm talking about. The 7th round pick, the large human of 7th round pick that I think is going to need some seasoning and some development as well. So you're not just talking about starters. I mean, you talk about depth as well, and that's just if the hope or the glass half full option that Trevor Penning somewhat works out, but there's a strong chance that it will not work out because it hasn't worked out since. And then, like I said, you kick in to left guard, and you've got another situation where, like you said, a guy that's never played it down and a guy that's been pretty much a reserve / spot starter offensive lineman. So to me, that's still where the Saints need to look in this post-draft free agency wave. I've called it before. It's one of the more underrated parts of the offseason calendar because of who's still available, who's not available, and what you could or may not be able to get based off of team drafts, who a team drafts, and who they may release after that draft. So the Saints still need to be very, very active. And with that in mind, we wanted to refresh our lists a little bit because Andrus Peat was one of my guys, but he wasn't the only one, and some other guys on that list are gone as well.
Definitely. So. I mean, I believe on your list you had Dalton Risner, Andrus Peat, and Tyler Boyd. Mm-hmm. Tyler Boyd signed with the Titans, the wide receiver from Cincinnati.
Yep.
So Tyler Boyd is off the board. Dalton Risner still there. Andrus Peat, we just mentioned, he signed elsewhere. So now 2 of your 3 guys, and we just made this list about a week and a half ago.
Right.
And in that time, 2 of those guys have signed with other teams. So who would you replace them with if you had to continue that list?
Well, first off, Dalton Risner. Right? It's right here at the top of my page. I wrote it 3 times because he's still my number 1 option. He's still the guy, 28 years old, a lot of stars, quality football player. I know he wants to get paid, but maybe as the offseason goes on, maybe there's a bet on me type situation where he takes the 1 year bet on myself contract, because that's really what the Saints want to do. The Saints don't want to get locked in at this stage of the game with any long-term agreement, really with any player I just don't see that happening, just given the track record of free agency. So Dalton Risner, to me, is still option A because he is a locked and loaded starter from day one. You can count on as a guarantee. Only 28 years old, durable, knows the system, and he's a guy that, from what I understand, just doing a little research on him, was really well liked last year in Minnesota, both in the locker room and with the media as well. He was someone that kind of got it. You understand what I'm saying? Like how he knew how to communicate with media, teammates, explain what's going on, kind of a Zach Strief type person. But so he's number 1. Or maybe he's still number 1. But my fresh list goes like this. There's Lucas Patrick, who played for the Bears last year, 6'3", 311 pounds, 54 career starts, a little bit older, will turn 31 when the season starts, but has a connection to I believe it's is it the quarterback coach maybe? There's an assistant on staff that has a connection with Lucas Patrick, and perhaps that's someone they could look at. Phil Haynes.
And he's an offensive guard?
Offensive guard. And Phil Haynes is another guard, 6'4", 322, 28 years old. Only 8 starts last year. I think he had 13 or 14 starts in his career, so not quite as experienced. And maybe, you kind of got some middle-tier veteran age guys that don't have a whole lot of starting experience in Lemieux and Herron, so maybe they do, maybe they don't go in that direction, but those are 2 guards. So I think those are 2 players you could consider for 1-year guys, minimal minimal price tag. Go out and get him, and at least you have a veteran option at that position that has enough quality starts where you feel somewhat confident in playing that guy from day one. And if they lose the job, so be it. But at least you have that in the building. And the other guy we got to talk about, and this is why the comment section is so important.
Yep.
Because when we did this list, a lot of y'all came at us with Hunter Renfrow, the wide receiver, played with Derek Carr, was a Raider. He's still available. Let me just go on the record and saying I would have absolutely no problem with Hunter Renfrow, still 28 years old. The Saints, I'm watching all the tape right now from last year's offense. They could use a little bit of life to the skill positions. I'm just saying. They could add another player, some veteran experience with some skins on the wall that understands football, understands the quarterback. Very specific skill set. He's a smaller slot, so he's a guy that's not going to get open with contested catches. It's going to be more detailed route running, move the sticks underneath. This guy is coming off of a 103 reception season back in 2021, so not too long ago. Had some injuries in 2022, and then last year it got weird for the Raiders with that weird year with was it McDaniels that got fired, and Antonio Pierce came up. So Hunter Renfrow, if he's y'all's guy, I would have no problem with it. I know the Saints have been really honing in on this big contested catch type player. This is a smaller slot player that can make contested catches, but is also going to get open by detailed footwork and route running, and he's got great hands. He's got a connection to Derek Carr. So if somehow that became an option, I would have no problem with Hunter Renfrow.
Definitely, and as I made a list as well. I had Tyler Boyd, David Bakhtiari, the left tackle that formerly played in Green Bay, and Justin Simmons, the safety from Denver, on my list. With Tyler Boyd being gone, the first name I thought to replace him, reading a lot of you guys' comments, you're right, it's Hunter Renfrow. Yep. When it comes to just being man-to-man defense, being a route runner and finding a way to get open, Hunter Renfrow has always excelled at that, all the way back to his days at, I believe it was Clemson.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson was his quarterback.
Right, and then against zone coverage, he just has an innate sense of where to sit in the openings of that zone.
No doubt.
He's got the chemistry built in with Derek Carr. And when I looked at making my list, I looked at the needs of the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, offensive line being at the top of that list, not only because of the state of the line right now, but for the purposes of depth, because in a perfect world, all 5 of your starters stay healthy. But if something happens to one of them, you don't have any depth in that offensive line right now. After offensive line, a need that I think is going a little bit under the radar at times is wide receiver. And not just wide receiver 3, but also maybe even wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
We know Olave is going to hold it down at wide receiver 1, but in this new system, do you trust Rashid Shaheed to be your bona fide number 2 receiver? Some may say yes. Some may say there could be a bit of a competition there to see if anybody else could step into that and maybe use Rashid Shaheed as a slot guy, a number 3 guy, a creativity type guy in this new offense. So that's why Hunter Renfrow, I had Tyler Boyd originally, some other guys out on the free agency, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Zay Jones, Julio Jones, kind of guys.
Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Goodness gracious. The wide receiver is definitely getting picked over in that free agency. But the guy I like the most, David Bakhtiari, the former All-Pro left tackle.
Yes.
I think that he would be, if you put him at the blind side, if he stays healthy, you don't have to worry about that. I think he's still got years of good play left in him. And I think as a veteran presence, working around Taliesin Fuaga, working around Trevor Penning, I think he would be invaluable to them. And then Justin Simmons. The Saints in the draft, they addressed cornerback. They went to the secondary, but they went to the secondary position that, honestly, they really didn't have an immediate need at with corner. I think at safety, you look right now, you've got Tyrann Mathieu and Jordan Howden. If the season were to start today, those would probably be your starting 2 safeties. Tyrann Mathieu, getting a little older, but he showed last year he can still produce when he needs to. And Jordan Howden, the second-year player now, do you trust him to be the full-time starter at safety? Do you want to bring some competition in with him? I tell you what, you bring in Justin Simmons, who I believe was a second-team All-Pro player last season. We talk about veterans and people you can learn from. If Howden got to work with Justin Simmons and Honey Badger back there in the secondary, roaming at safety, that would be something that would make your team better today. Now, obviously, you got to make the contract work.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Justin Simmons is probably looking to get paid. Maybe he does the 1-year rental thing. Bet on myself. I think Tyron did that in Houston a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But he's a guy you come in and because he's in discussion for best safety in football. Right. Justin Simmons, top 2 or 3, top 5 in football when it comes to the free safety position. So if you're bringing him in, that's a statement. That's no. We're still trying to win now. We still think this guy can help us and be a missing piece to become a contender, not just a veteran fill in the depth kind of piece that could maybe help you down the road. Now that's a guy that would help you today. And I want to bring something else up because I think it was our last pod. Was it our last pod? Yeah, we did the Derek Carr pod.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said something that really stuck with me about when you looked at the teams that were winning in the NFC last year and you looked at the group of skilled players, how much more in their prime and just, I don't know what the word is, but they just seem to have a little bit more burst, more explosion, just more. They just seem collectively, just pick one, San Francisco with Debo and Kittle and Ayuk, all those guys, McCaffrey. Look at Detroit, St. Brown and Laporta and Gibbs and Montgomery, all those guys. And then you look at
even
Tampa Bay. And then so that stuck with me because like I said, I'm watching all the offense from a season ago, and I'm like, they could really add a premier skill player to this group. Yeah. They really can. Because look, I like Olave becoming a 1. He's not a 1 yet. And how good of a 1 can he be in terms of 1s around the NFL? I think he could be a really good number 1 option in the NFL at some point. I don't know if he's there yet. Is everyone in the wide receiver core ready to bump up 1? Is everybody ready? Is Olave ready to bump up to 1, Shaheed to 2, Perry to 3? I don't think that's a guarantee. So to me, Hunter Renfrow is a guy that can come in, help you move the sticks, a veteran guy, and just can add to this kind of the collectivity, or like the collective just production of skill players that maybe if they're young, they're not quite there yet, or if they were once great, maybe they're on the backside like Alvin Kamara and a couple other guys. I think that's fair to question. I think that group can add offense. The offense as a whole can add a playmaker, whether it's a running back, a tight end, or a wide receiver. And it feels like what's available, wide receiver would be the route to go.
Definitely, because, again, I like Rashid Shaheed, but when you look at the wide receiver 2s across the NFC, San Francisco, your wide receiver 2, Ayuk. Or you could even say Debo Samuel if you think Ayuk stepped into the 1. That's a really good number 2. You look at Philadelphia, Devontae Smith is their number 2.
Yeah.
You look at the Rams, take Puka Nacua, take Cooper Kupp, whichever you want. Right. That's a dangerous number 2. You look at Tampa Bay, and they've got Chris Godwin. You look at Seattle, they've got Tyler Lockett. You look at a team I think will make a lot of noise in the NFC this year in Chicago, and you're going to have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Romo Dunze. Like, goodness gracious. These teams in the NFC are stacked from top to bottom. And I know a lot of time at the beginning of last year, you kind of looked at the AFC, and you looked at the NFC, and you said, man, the AFC has a lot of heavy hitters. The NFC has the 49ers and the Eagles. These NFC teams are starting to step up, and these offenses are looking dangerous, and that's what you got to keep up with if you're the Saints.
Yeah, and so when you add it all up, I understand the concern right now when it comes to the Saints because we named off the offensive line issues. I just told you I think they got some decent skill guys, but where are they at in the hierarchy of the NFC when you look at it as a group? Right. All your wide receivers, your running backs, and your tight ends that contribute on a week-in, week-out basis. I think that's fair. I think that's fair to ask. Now, the unknown is this. How much does a new system and a new style of play maybe be the thing for that player we're not expecting to be to take their game up a next level? Like I said, bump up a spot.
Right.
That's possible. We'll all figure that out. But I sure would feel a lot more comfortable if I had at least one more playmaker at my disposal on the Saints offense.
Exactly. And like you said, Rashid Shaheed kind of broke out of nowhere a couple years ago. Maybe that guy is on the roster. Maybe that's A.T. Perry. Maybe that's Bub Means, the receiver they drafted in the 5th round. Maybe Cedric Wilson, where the Saints were signing a bunch of one-year deals this offseason. They gave Cedric Wilson 2 years. So maybe that guy to step up is on the roster, but only time will tell. And as we talk about time telling, tomorrow and really Saturday, over the weekend is when Saints rookie camp kind of gets underway. You'll be there on Saturday to kind of take a look at how these young guys are looking. What are you looking forward to the most heading into rookie camp?
Okay. Well, first off, if you're listening, didn't watch, I just knocked my
Just punted his notebook.
my legal pad here, notebook off the coffee table here by trying to put my foot down here. So that got a laugh out of everybody. If you saw it on YouTube, congratulations. I know you're probably chuckling right now. Anyway, okay, so rookie minicamp is not something that you're going to get a whole lot out of. But there's usually one or two things that stand out to me when I go. It isn't always open to us, but it has been the last couple of years. For instance, in 2022, the biggest thing I noticed when I was out there was how smooth Chris Olave ran. Okay. 2023, the first thing I saw was just how big and physical Brian Brzee was. 2024, what could I be looking for? I think it's obvious. You're not going to get a whole lot out of the offensive line other than how they looked physically. I remember seeing Marcus Davenport the first time. I was like, my God, he is tall. Felt the same way about Brzee last year. So I'm going to look at Fuaga. I don't think Kool-Aid's going to be there. He might be there, but he's not going to do anything on the field. He's still dealing with that foot injury.
Right.
But the guy we're all going to look at, given his name, given the position, and given just the curiosity around what he can or cannot become, is Spencer Rattler. I want to see him spin it. I want to see him spin it. And look, when you're at these things and there's no pads, and there's only a couple positions you can really follow. It's generally wide receiver, it's DB, and it's quarterback because you follow the ball. I mean, it's hard to really get a gauge on a running back because, I mean, you're not getting tackled. It's hard to get a true gauge on a offensive lineman because you're not in full pads. There's not full contact. Or linebacker the same way because you can meet a running back in the hole. But, I mean, there's no tackling to the ground. Maybe you can see a linebacker in coverage. But nonetheless, you see what I'm saying. I just think, for me, I really want to get an up-close look at Spencer Rattler. Both how big is he, because he's not listed very tall, like just a shade over 6 foot, not even 6'1". And then they said the arm talent is impressive. If that is indeed the case, that will show up at rookie minicamp, and it's something that I will kind of log in the back of my memory there as we get closer and closer to the offseason program and training camp. So that's what I'll be looking at. And maybe there's a player that jumps out. Maybe there's someone I'm not really looking at on my radar that all of a sudden jumps out. And there's always this. There's the undrafted class that comes in, and I know Dallin Holker was the guy we've been looking at.
Right.
There's your list of guys you get on draft day. What is that? I mean, 15 guys that sign. And then there's always one or two that sign after. And then this rookie minicamp comes, and they get some tryout guys in. Mark my words. One of the guys they signed on draft day will get cut, and one of the rookie minicamp tryout guys will get put on. Will get signed to a contract. It happens every single year. That's why that rookie minicamp tryout thing, it looks kind of like an afterthought. It's actually very, very, very important if you're a guy trying to catch on to a roster. So just be on the lookout for that as well.
Yeah, because those guys will be playing their heart out, obviously. Yeah. And when you think about rookie minicamp, you don't always think about competition like maybe you would at OTAs, minicamp, training camp, because really the theme of the day is kind of just getting these rookies ingratiated, getting their feet wet, getting them to start looking at the playbook, learning the playbook and everything. And I'm with you. I want to see Spencer Rattler throw the ball in person. You hear everybody saying, oh, he's got all the tools. He could be dynamic. You know, I want to see it. I want to see Bub Means, the receiver. I mentioned there's a spot. There's an opportunity, and there's about 8 guys battling for it right now, but there's an opportunity for somebody to come in and snag that wide receiver 3 spot. And if you stand out enough, maybe even the wide receiver 2 spot.
Yeah.
So him, and then the guy we made a podcast about about a week ago, Dallin Holker, the guy who was one of the best tight ends in the nation last year. The Saints definitely have a need at tight end. So between Holker, between Bub Means, and again, obviously there's only so much you can see, but like you said with Chris Olave, how you can just see how smooth he looks just running, how smooth he looks getting in and out of his routes. Those are the main things I would look for. That and Bub Means and Holker, and then I just want to see Spencer Rattler throw the ball.
And I'll tell you this just from my own personal experience and my own just the way kind of our lives work. When you go, the season ends, you do your post-season kind of recap, you're still watching the playoffs, and you get into free agency, then the draft. This is our first taste of football again. Yeah. For the team you cover. And for somebody like me, I just like being out there. I like being out there and just getting the routine back, getting back into the swing of things. And rookie minicamp is that first taste. I'm not gonna come here on Monday and say MVP. I'm calling it. I'm just gonna say a few things that jump out to me when rookies are going against rookies, and we'll see what kind of weekend it brings for the Saints out on Airline Drive.
Yep, definitely excited for it. You're going to be like a kid on Christmas Eve on Friday. Just can't wait to get back out there, get back in the routine, be on Airline Drive in Metairie, and hey, it's exciting.
It is exciting, and it should be a fun weekend ahead. You enjoy yourself.
Yes, sir.
Is that the Show Me State, Missouri?
I don't know.
That's the Show Me State, man.
I'm about to find out.
But enjoy Missouri. Congrats to your sister again. Congrats to the Johnson family. Hopefully, we'll see a future psychologist in the mix here in the real world in a couple years here. So anyway, that'll do it for us. For Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next week on Overtime.